So if we can stand for the opening karakia, please. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau. Thank you. Okay, we've got apologies from the Mayor and Deputy Mayor and Councillor Donovan, and I've got lateness for Councillors Moore and Harrison Hunt, and I think James is off to the same funeral as the Mayor, so he'll be here for a wee bit and then be off as well. And I haven't heard from Sarah, but I'm assuming she'll be here. Might be far away. I'd say. Okay, so I'm happy to move those. Tim's happy. Oh, sorry. Yep. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. We'll just note the declarations of interest that are there, which is fine. So I'll do a bit of it, and then Melanie will do the CCHL stuff. There's a happy to move the minutes. Melanie's happy to second. All in favour? Against? That's carried. To include the supplementary report on the submission, I'm happy to move. Melanie's happy to second. All in favour? Against? That's carried. David, we don't have any public forums or deputations or presentations. So Peter, that comes to you.
Right, good morning everyone. Here we are again. This is a very steady report coming into the final result for the year next month. Because it's so consistent, I'll just give a brief overview rather than line by line it. Levels of service will likely finish at about 81%, looking for 85%. There are some operational factors in there and they're set out in the detail. I do feel, and I don't have a lot of science for this, but I do feel that perhaps the LTP has had something to do with some of these results just being steady for the year. It's been a big burden for the entire year. Key capital projects going very well. And that's also reflected in the spend rate. So both delivery and spend are very good for capital projects. Non-key capital slightly lower at 82. Got a little bit of an echo there, I think. Lastly, drawdown of future planning and drawdown of future capital projects, very good for 25, just a little bit under for 26 and 27, but that's probably due to uncertainties around the LTP as much as anything else. Lastly, operational budgets, quite a healthy operational surplus of nearly 13 million, and very close to, we're actually the closest we've been for many years to spending to budget on the capital program. Minus 2.2 is, well, put it this way, we've been as low as 20% out. So minus 2.2 is actually extremely good. That's a big credit to the project managers and also PMO for staying on top of that consistently month on month. That's the overall results. The level of service exceptions are there and attached, but they're consistent with previous months. I'll just quickly draw your attention to, at the end of the report, and this is a response to Councillor Johansson's question around customer service ticketing and getting some data. You'll see there, these are dashboard results available through your community board advisors. And they break down for you in very clear terms exactly what's been going on within the ward. So the first page is Coastal Burwood, but there's examples there from Fendleton, Horswell. What the big ticket, literally the big ticket items are in your ward, where and what services they are, and how quickly they're being resolved. So, I mean, this is not a complete answer street by street, but it is a big breakthrough on simply responding to anecdotal evidence. Your board advisors can do this for you. I'm not sure that we've talked about this before, about access to councillors just at the moment, but this information is certainly out there on a ward-by-ward basis. Other than that, I don't have anything really to add this morning.
Thank you, Peter, for that. It's a really good report, and it's good to see it's relatively steady as we approach year end. So I'm happy to. Oh, Aaron, you got a question?
Oh, yeah, just quickly, Peter. We had a presentation at our board on Monday night on that
that stuff?
system. Yeah, it was
Sweet.
fantastic. They walked us through the whole board, through the whole thing. So
Cool.
it's really good.
Thank you.
Great. So Aaron, you have to move this. Yep. Yanni, you got a question, but you'll second it. Cool. Great. Go for it.
Two questions from me. So, are we able to? So, I appreciate that this is the public-facing information, but if we take water supply for example, and can see in Linwood we've had 151 tickets. Are we able to look and see geographically where those tickets are coming from within the ward, so we know if one street's got 50, and it won't be 50, but maybe it's 20 or 10. We can see the hot spots.
I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
I can help. Yes, you can. They do map them.
Right.
So the CSRs do get geographically mapped. When you look at a map, all you see is a whole lot of dots. You have to zoom in, but you can geographically see where they are.
Like a heat map type thing. Okay.
Yes.
And just the other one where I just and it won't be any surprise, but we're failing. We're not meeting the target around people feeling involved in council decision making. And previously we're told that there's a program of improvement. So this is just on page 27 at the top. So I've put in for 2 previous F&P meetings written questions. Tried to ask one in the meeting as well because I haven't had an answer. So the question really is, what is the opportunities that we're doing to improve that engagement and participation, or to improve the percentage of residents who feel they can participate in and contribute to council decision making? So is there a clear list and program of work around what we're doing for improvements? Because if I read the response there, it's slightly more detailed than we've had previously, but still not really very specific.
I can provide that as feedback back to the GM and head of service to respond to. I don't know the detail under that response, but I can certainly ask for them to provide some detail.
So I think maybe can we get something back? Do you want to just? Yeah, we get a lot of emails from you, Yanni.
Yeah.
So, but this one, what we might do is just get. Could Katie come along to the next
I
F&P?
think there was a briefing of councillors not so long ago, but if you want her to formally do a presentation to the F&P, that's fine as well as a briefing.
Well, if we've had the briefing, I don't see why we would need it.
Is that the one to reduce our target to a more achievable level? Yeah, I guess that's not kind of what I was expecting. Is we'd get very tangible things. Like some of the very tangible things are the community often asks for longer to be able to make submissions. We used to have a residence group policy where residence groups would be sent notices of work that was happening in their area.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that we used to
that's
do
good feedback.
That's
So
we're no
what
longer doing.
we'll do is Mary and the team will take that offline and we'll come back.
With
So
a
that's
plan-
an
with a
action
plan.
out of this,
Yep.
David. Yep.
Just to say that there is some additional information in here, which is good. It's just, I guess, just having a little bit greater understanding of how the steps are being rolled out.
Cool. Okay, perfect. So we've got that. So that's moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, everyone.
Russell.
Morning, Mr. Chair, councillors. So this is the finance report for May. Reports, I'll just cover it briefly, Mr. Chair, and take any questions at the end should there be any. So we're looking at a current operational surplus of 34.5 million, about $21 million ahead of budget. The forecast for year end is after carry forwards is 12.6 million. So that's up about $1.6 million on the April position. So that's pleasing. And I just say that the closer we get to year end, the more certain we can be on the forecasting. So we've seen a gradual increase over previous months, which is positive. So the reason for that position is pretty consistent as I've reported in previous months. Subventions, receipts coming through, consenting revenues, we're reducing the backlog there. Waste operations is positive. increased participation in a number of sport and rec centres, and growth in the rating database has also all helped towards that. Some underspends in costs. Staff costs remain under budget by $7 million, currently projecting to be 6.3 at year end. Grant payments, so that's more of a timing, delays in that. Maintenance in transport is down a wee bit. Professional advice, the weighting of that is more in the latter part of the year, so expecting some to come through more. Digital capitalisation, again, that we've talked a number of times around that matter in previous councils. I'll just point out that that's position is still $3.6 million deficit for year end, but that's been a slight improvement over recent months too, which is positive. In the capital space, and I'll just touch this briefly because the acting PMO head will cover that after me, but we're talking about we're looking at about $18.3 million variance at year end, so that's spending of about 686 against a budget of 704. So about $18.3 million will be unspent at year end. That's projection at this point. Most of that, of course, is likely to be requested to become as a carry forward. And just on that, any carry forwards, when we did mention it in section 4 of this report, they'll come back to council for ratification before anything happens after the year end position. And the Treasury, again, Section 7 Treasury, yes, just pointing out that everything is in compliance, all our matrix is in compliance, so again, nothing out of order there. That's pretty much it, Mr. Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Aaron, you're going to... That's a really good report. So we've got Aaron first.
Just, Peter, and I think I know what your answer is going to be, but on the surplus, which year end's going to be 12.6, and given that a chunk of that is from salaries, not borrowed money, can that be used to reduce rates, the coming rates, or not? Or can some of it, or do we just use it to we don't borrow that much?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we come back at year end and we confirm what the surplus is, a number of options will be put to council what we do with that surplus. Understanding we've already signalled, I guess, of the 12, 7 will be used. That's the subvention payments, so we've already indicated that through the LTP process. Still leaves about 5. So from a cash perspective, cash flow perspective, yes, we're not borrowing as much, but there's a number of options we could use
so
that
we'll
surplus
see that in
for.
another month.
Sorry?
We'll see that in another month.
Correct. Once the year end position,
cool.
It's finalised. But yeah, traditionally, any surplus is used to be repaying debt, or if anything is pops up that we weren't anticipating, we could put it towards that. But
well, normally our surplus is what underspends on capital projects, but you've got some there that are slightly different.
Oh, this is just the operational spend? Yeah, for sure. So putting capital one side, this is purely the operational spend.
Okay.
We're signalling 12.6.
Yeah, I think basically what we do this year is, now that we've struck the LTP, or except for final stuff tomorrow, it would likely be we'd just pay down debt.
Yeah.
With that 12 mil, because we've of that 7's already been tagged to pay down debt. So
Correct.
if you take that and then you combine our underspending capital, it really does help the debt profile a bit as well, and which then has a flow on to interest rates, or interest costs. So could be a really good question, Tyler.
With that subvention, so is it all of the 7 that's going to be paying down debt?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. Yanni.
Thank you. Just one question from me. In 4.24, it says that EQ repair program is a proposed carry forward of 88 million. 0.88 of a million. And then you've listed the projects. The previous year we carried forward quite a lot more. Do we have a breakdown of where that spending has been? For example, there was 100,000 on for the Apawa Children's Library, and yet we've got less to be carried forward than what was for next year or the upcoming year than what we carry forward this year, but we haven't done anything with that building. So I'm kind of wondering where the money's gone, and if we could just get like what we had previously, we had quite a good program of how much for each of the individual projects. Is it possible to get that information and just understand what's happening there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, I'm not sure of the detail of your question, Councillor, but I'll take that away and we'll come back and see what greater detail we can provide. Yep.
Tyler's going to move this. Jake looks like he's happy to second it. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Great. Richard, do you want to come and do the capital performance report? Thanks.
Great. Morning, everybody. I guess we've been talking quite a bit about capital in the last 24 hours. But effectively, the report's relatively straightforward at this time of year. Looks like a good result, as we've already covered off in both of those PMU report and the finance report. Looking at around about 480 is probably where we're going to land, closer to 480 than the 470, which is what the PMO was predicting. We've had a really good, strong end to the year, which is good because that means a good, strong start to spending next year's capital plan. I don't think there's much else that I need to highlight in the report. I think just about everything else has been highlighted through other reports over the month. Happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you for that, Richard. A really good report. And it's kind of good to see that PMO forecast aligning as you picked up. Does anyone have any questions for Richard? Mark?
Yeah, just interested to hear an update around a few projects that I flipped through some questions for. Have you seen those?
I haven't seen them personally. Which ones?
That might be a Lynette
Lynette.
answer, I think.
Very good.
One moment, caller. She's something she prepared earlier. I'll move this report too, by the way, and I think Tim's happy to second it.
Don't mess it that close. Kia ora. Good morning, everybody. Ms. Councillor Peters, you asked some questions via email regarding Amy's Awatea Springs. We've got a question here on Horswell Junction Road and a question on South Express, particularly Gilberthorpe Parkers intersection. Amy's Awatea Springs, so there's work being done in the sense of initial modelling's been completed and there's some idea of the feasibility and work that needs to be done at the intersection. There are some significant challenges at that intersection and the team need to come back and talk to the community board to make sure they are clearly understanding the problem that they're solving and that the board is clear about the challenges that we're facing so that we can have a conversation about the compromises that need to be made. So that needs to go ahead, so that will.
Thank you.
And I'm sure the team are listening to me today, so they'll take that action on board. Horswell Junction Road, we are still experiencing delays in getting the signalling finished. KiwiRail have significant challenges with their signalling resources. We are working with KiwiRail and we have advised you that there is going to be additional budget required signalled from KiwiRail. I don't think that's been finalised yet.
Very good.
South Express, the section through Kyle Park is currently being procured or has just finished. Sorry I didn't get an update overnight. No, the remaining section from Gilberthorpe's heading west out towards Templeton is due to hit the market any day soon. So that will be procured and get going. The challenge we have is the Gilberthorpe Parkers intersection, and what we are trying to do is look at whether we can decouple that from the cycleway so that we can keep moving forward with it. But it will be a significant challenge moving forward because of the crossing.
Yep.
Yeah, and the complexity of the intersection. But it is not a project that the staff are losing sight of.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for the update.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, I don't need Lynette today. I just wanted to refer to page 55 of our agenda, which is digital. I've asked this quite a few times and I didn't know how really to shape it, but I just wanted to cut straight to the chase and ask if there's any way we're able to see internal digital priorities in terms of the way that they want to do things. one of the key interests for me was the public-facing platforms, particularly with the native app and internal programs. I'm wondering if you might be able to get some sort of advice on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be able to provide there's a digital roadmap and there's a digital strategy. So I think that's what you'd be after to understand exactly how we're devoting and investing in this area. So I can get
Great.
that for you easily.
Awesome, thank you.
That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favour? Against?
Thank you.
That's carried. Great. Thank you very much. Rightio. Is Brent's? Oh yeah, Brent's here. Great. And Helene. 19. Item 19. The council submission on RMA. So that's that supplementary agenda. Yeah.
Thanks. We take the report and draft submission as read, but happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Anything? No? Cool. Must be a good job. Or it is a good job. I shouldn't say must be. So moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Great. Thank you. Excellent. Linda, do you want to do your reports?
She's often outside.
I reckon we're going to work everyone until 9 o'clock every night before a meeting. It's great. Yeah. Are they? What do we reckon? Aaron, do you want to do? I mean, really, all we've got is VO and your notice of motion. Do you want to just do your notice of motion now? Unless Linda's. If she's there, it would be. Is Linda? Okay. All right. We'll might as well wait. So then we've really. Can we just check? We might want to let VO know. Yeah. Potentially. And then CCHL. Oh, I should actually ask, does anyone have any questions on Linda's reports? Does it? No?
Oh, I mean, just noting conflicts.
Yeah.
Very high level
Oh,
question.
okay. We'll just wait for Linda. That's okay. Yeah, that's fine. It's all good. We'll just give it a minute. We might just take a break for a minute or two until. Oh no. Good timing. You're in the hot seat. Yep.
Sorry. Good morning. This paper is just a general paper with several reports that didn't warrant reporting separately. Four of them are final SOIs. There's nothing very different in them to what was in the drafts. When you considered the draft SOIs, the Rickett and Bush Trust, you made a couple of comments and they've been picked up in the final. We've got quarter 3 for Te Kaha, nothing unusual there. And annual report for Civic Financial Services, and there's nothing of any note there.
Yeah, I can't recall about the Rickett and Bush Trust. Hi, Linda.
Hi.
Can you remind me what we asked for in regards to Rickett and Bush?
Yes, one of the, we asked that they improve their articulation, excuse me, of alignment between what they're doing and the council's strategic objectives, which they've shown.
I see.
But the big thing was a performance target relating to the bush enhancement project, which they have split the project into two discrete components, and they just needed a target that was outcome focused rather than what their original target was, which was to start. So now we've got to finish.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much.
Mine was just about the operational levy and capital grants from us. What's the process? I can't recall what the process is that we give those to them. I know it's on page 139.
Yeah. So the Riccarton Bush Trust has its own Act of Parliament, and in that Act we're required to provide funding, and we engage with the Trust and work through their budget with them. And that's basically...
So the operational levy goes into the LTP.
Yes.
And with the capital grants, there must be a process that we go through, but I just can't recall it. Yeah.
Yes, we do that internally through they'll put their capital proposals to us, and we look at them and make a call on that, and it goes through the financials.
So have we, because those three sums there they've got for the next 3 financial years, so we haven't actually agreed to those yet, though, have we? Or have we?
We have.
We have. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. This will be my my annual question on the Civic Building Limited, where we've been told that we're at a point where the rent is too high and it's not working for us, and that there's discussions with Ngāi Tahu, I think the market rent in Christchurch is about $383 per square metre, and we're being charged about $532. So just looking at the statement of intent, there's nothing in here that makes any reference to any discussions, and I'm just wondering if we can just get an update on what's happening and why there's no mention of any discussion to try and address the situation.
Well, I don't think that that particular issue would come into the SOI unless there had been some agreement reached and it had an impact on the financials. I can see Elizabeth indicating she's got information. It's something that I'm not involved in.
Not a lot of information that you wouldn't have. It's those discussions are of course controlled by the terms of the lease and the parameters that are set around those. And I'm sure that is one of the matters on which further information could be brought back by the staff officers who are dealing with that.
Right. So there's nothing that we should be thinking about putting in the statement of intent that talks about our desire to look at that issue, even though the chair of Civic Building has said that they're concerned about it.
No, because it's the shareholder in the building. It's a partial shareholder in the building as opposed to the lease agreement. So I don't think this would be the appropriate forum to raise it, unless I've got it wrong.
It doesn't seem like the appropriate forum in which to raise it. I mean, that is also a contractual matter due to the terms of the lease, rather than it being something that I would think should go into the statement of intent. As I say, we can come back.
Take your point and leave it with the chief executive.
Yeah, so we can definitely provide a briefing around how we're approaching the building, both in terms of the lease arrangements, but also in terms of our use of it and configuration of it.
Yeah, because there's been quite a bit of work done in progress underway, which...
Yeah. Yep. Great.
Definitely.
We've got a lot of time on our hands.
Okay, great. All right, so does someone want to move it that isn't conflicted?
I can.
Aaron, great. And Mel, yep. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Good timing, VO. Thank you, Linda. Yeah, great, yep. Great, come on up. So everyone will know Carolyn. I don't know whether... Well, everyone should know Brent Ford, but if you don't, this is Brent Ford. He's one of the directors at VO. Great.
All right, running early.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often.
I know. Yeah, apologies. Danny Schroeder was going to be joining us, our GM commercial, but obviously we're a little early, so he's not quite here yet, so we'll just carry on. But look, firstly, thank you. It's good to see you all. I'm sure you've been having a few marathon sessions in the last wee while, so hopefully this will be light and breezy. So look, reflecting on Q3, end of March, kind of always the way when we're here, it always feels like it's a lifetime ago, but good to look back as well as giving you a bit of a sense of looking forward as well. So just a couple of highlights around events and guests, a bit about local. So 282 events delivered across the VO portfolio of venues to end of March. Now that's just a smidge ahead of budget at 269. So tracking really well. We're just on track to deliver just under 400 events for the year. And you'll see 462,000 guests through the venues to the end of March. Again, we are beyond our 450,000 guest SOI target for the year as at the end of March. That's awesome. So we're on track to welcome about 650,000 guests at the end of the year. So again, well in excess of what we had forecast, which is awesome. Our local food procurement target again is well on track at 81% of all of our food sourced from Canterbury. And then just something we're sort of newly reporting on, which is another goal for us, which is around local engagement of suppliers and contractors. So that's sitting at 73%. Again, awesome, because all that does is create a wonderful local ecosystem when it comes to delivering events. A few highlights there. So to give you a sense of what March looked like. So March, we brought in 20% of our annual revenue in 1 month. So a few tired bodies at the end of March, to be fair, but it was awesome. And March traditionally has always been busy, but not quite that busy. So that was our biggest catering revenue month since pre-earthquake. So really exciting and shows you the real value of not only what events we're delivering across the portfolio, but also when we go outside of the venues. So Sail GP was a marquee event, not only for the city, but from a venues Ōtautahi perspective, we did all the food and beverage for Sail GP, which was awesome. And wasn't affected actually by the lack of sailing on day one. It's good news. But yeah, so obviously you'll see some of those highlights there. Great to see the stadium in use, albeit it's it's done us a service over the years, and it's looking forward to having a bit of a rest. It certainly delivered a few awesome events, so that was cool to see, particularly that Warriors partnership, as well as seeing the Crusaders kick off their season. That's all I'll say about that. All right, so just looking at obviously the local economic impact. Now, obviously venues do 4 things locally when it comes to impact, so social, cultural, environmental and economic. And just to have a look at some of those economic impact figures. So procurement of local food and beverage delivered a direct contribution of 1.26 million to the end of the third quarter. Local engagement of suppliers and contractors, 8.77 million. And then that estimated indirect impact from visitors coming to events at our venues, 19.42 million. So you'll see 29.4 indirect economic impact for the region to the end of Q3, which is pretty awesome. You'll see that closer to 40 by the end of the year. And sustainability, obviously, like we all are on a sustainability journey, and our carbon reduction roadmap is well in train. And a couple of highlights there up to the third quarter and things that we've achieved in Q3. So our reporting framework is well established now. We're using a platform called Green Halo, which will track our carbon reduction through to our target of 2030. And you'll see some of those projects there that are underway. So energy efficient lighting replacement at the arena, that's well on track. That 85% complete actually is at the end of June, not Q3. We've also increased the ticket levy at the arena to offset particularly some of those waste disposal and collection costs, just by $1, but it does offset the costs associated with that at the arena particularly. As we've talked about a little bit, delivering on sustainability aspirations is costly, but it's important we do it. So that's just one way that we can recoup some of those costs. We'll look to extend that levy to other venues in time as well. And the design process for replacing those boilers at the arena has also commenced, so that will deliver a 39% reduction in our carbon footprint, which is awesome. But the actual implementation of that will be pushed to 26-27, and the reason for that is in order to undertake that project, we need to close the arena for 3 months. Now, at the minute, we need the arena to be open as well. And so when we have Te Kaha here, that gives us an alternate venue for any displaced events. So, the same will be for when we replace the retractable seating that will happen in the same period.
Tell them off.
I'll get going. And then just in terms of those community events that obviously our ability to deliver those is enabled by us delivering on those other commercial events and commercial outcomes. So to date, we've to the end of Q3, 40 community events. Our annual SOI target is 45, so we're well on track to exceed that target. And you'll see the value of that community discount applied there. It's already at 136,000 versus our annual target of 100,000. And I just wanted to highlight, this is the first time we've probably reported on this in this forum, but just a little bit around our team engagement. Obviously, you know, what we do externally is fundamental to who Venues Ōtautahi is, but the team delivering those outstanding outcomes and the environment that we create for that team is fundamental to our success. So I just wanted to highlight some of those team engagement survey results. So we had an 85% participation rate, which means that this is a good representation of how our team are feeling. And some of those highlights there give us real comfort that the culture is strong and healthy. 82% of our team feeling comfortable in discussing issues with their leader is really, really important to us. It gives us a sense of real trust in the environment. 75% would recommend Venues Ōtautahi to others. Now that's obviously our net promoter measure. So again, really good to see that positive outcome. 76% feeling empowered to strive to be their best. And what gives me a slight sense of comfort is 78% trust our leaders to lead VO to future success. Wouldn't probably want to see that too low. I'll sleep at night. And then a couple of highlights on our NPS. So this is where we measure our client satisfaction and also our guest satisfaction. So you'll see there 78 NPS for client and 58 for guest. The last measure I've seen there to the end of May, that client NPS has gone up again to over 80, which is awesome. So again, good to see some of those positive outcomes both internally and externally. And I just thought, you know, obviously these forums are helpful when we can have a bit of a chat just to give you some assurance of where council support, operational support is going and how we account for that internally. So we essentially have two arms to our business. One is around the delivery of events, so attraction, planning and delivery, as well as those commercial partnerships. And that kind of sits out to the left. So that's where we generate around 20 million of revenue. We have 18.5 million of overheads and expenses, operating expenses. So we deliver a $1.5 million EBITDA. So that's the event side of the business. What that then does is that 1.53 contributes to managing the assets. So the other side of the business is managing the assets on behalf of the city. So you'll see there, and we all know it, those costs are high, right? We're laboured with pretty high utilities, insurance, repairs, maintenance, all of those things add up. They're big, hefty assets. So about 6.5 million of that it costs us to run those assets every year. And you'll see there that the 3 million of council operating support goes directly into that bucket, along with the 1.5 from events. And then the subventions that come in pretty much cover the asset management side of the business. So I just thought it was important to highlight that. You're obviously going through a lot of, a lot of consideration. I know that's baked in, but just wanted to give you a sense of assurance as to where that operating support goes. The events side of the business stands alone and delivers a really good outcome. And obviously that will grow over the coming while. But that asset management side of the business, the predominant number and that 6.5 are uncontrollable. So good to see the makeup there. End of Q3, we are 1.5 million ahead of budget when it comes to operating income, which is a good result. But you will see that it's not washing out entirely when it comes to our EBITDA at 200k behind budget. Now, the reason for that is, one is those uncontrollable costs that we've talked about, an unexpected rise in insurance of 54%, utilities 20%, living wage close to 10. You'll see another 7 this year. And then obviously with Venues Ototahi meeting all of those te kaha pre-opening costs. You'll understand that obviously those costs don't start when the venue opens. We're out in the market for a range of commercial partnerships, corporate hospitality, technology development, website development, resource, a lot of legal costs. So there's a lot that goes into getting ready commercially and operationally. And as I say, that work starts back here in order to be able to hit the ground running and maximise the opportunity the new venue presents in 2026. And to that end, a quick update on te kaha. So some of the things that we're working on at the minute, commercial strategy, so obviously corporate hospitality. We're not in the market yet. We will be in the market in early 2025, but the demand remains high. That waiting list for corporate suites is now over 200. So really positive when we've only got 23 suites. But there are a range of corporate hospitality options, so hopefully no one will be too disappointed. Sponsorship and commercial partnerships. So we're in the market at the minute and right at the end of a ticketing RFP. So it's a ticketing partner across all of the venues. We're the second biggest ticketing contract in the country. And as you can imagine, it's a fairly competitive environment. All of our ticketing partners, potential partners, are owned by the major promoters. So as you can imagine, ticketing and content go hand in hand. So it's a good problem to have at the minute. Crusaders, so we're working really closely with the Crusaders on our joint venture, and that's tracking really well. We're excited about what that looks like and trying something different, sharing a bit of risk, sharing a bit of reward, which is awesome. Retail tenancies, that's just the 2 empty shell and core areas in the stadium. We will be looking for venue activations as one of those initiatives to drive genuine outside of event day activation and life and heart into the precinct. Our naming rights announcement is imminent, and we'll give you a bit more of a detailed briefing on that on Tuesday next week. And we're working on the launch event series. What we're trying to do in that first launch period is work on a few main principles. One of those principles is to deliver the most economic impact we can from that first 3 months of that venue being open. 2 is to get as many people in our community through that venue in any which way we can. They're the 2 things that we want to see, and we want to celebrate this, and we want to celebrate the importance of it, not only globally, but in our in our local context. So this is something we should all be so proud of, and we should so enjoy this thing because we've been waiting a long time, and it's going to be an absolute game changer for this city. So 2026 can't come soon enough. Our operational programs, so we've got a program of projects there are about 80 projects in there, so they're our commercial and operational projects, and that's us getting ready to hit the ground running when we open in 2026. And then just one other aspect, we're looking to set up a Central City partners forum. So that'll be a business forum and a community forum, and it has two aspects. One is operational, so what we need to do around managing noise and all those other implications of having this venue open in the city. But secondly is to how do we partner with local businesses to leverage this opportunity. So that's local hospitality, local retailers, local accommodation, all of those things. We can create an absolute ecosystem in the Central City to leverage this venue for everybody in the city. And then looking forward, so obviously the Q3 is about looking back, but important to have a look at what we're focused on. Our continued focus is around growth and diversification. We want to continue to increase our revenue, and we want to continue to have an impact on the region, and that cuts across those four main items: social, cultural, environmental, and economic. And growth is not only about what we can do to build venue utilisation in the current suite of venues, but you look at the likes of SailGP and the impact that it has on our revenue base, and those types of opportunities are the things we need to chase. Accelerating that Te Kaha program, as much as just under 2 years seems like a long way away, it will absolutely rip by, in a good way and a bad way. So we need to make sure that we're ready. Continued focus on executing that sustainability carbon reduction roadmap. We've got a really clear pathway forward, but we can't take our eye off the ball. We are preparing for a really strong FY 24-25 when it comes to the event makeup, and particularly around ticketed events. November is going to be absolutely mad, for example, and I'll tell you that Wolfbrook Arena is absolutely kicking goals. And to give you assurance that that remains entirely relevant when Te Kaha is open. It's a really sweet spot at 9,000. It's the only arena in the country with a range of corporate suites, and so remains really relevant when the new venue is open, with the arena mode at around 15,000 and obviously large concert mode. And actually an interesting fact that Christchurch now already has the best pathway for an artist when it comes to venues, because you've got a graduation. So you go James Hay, Auditorium, Wolfbrook Arena, and then to the stadium. So when you actually get that extra arena mode at the stadium, you've got another graduated path. You look at Wellington, for example, you go 400, 4,000, 40,000. You know, it doesn't give you a lot of room. So Christchurch is really well positioned now and in the future. And then obviously to continue focusing on this volatility that we have in our economic environment, particularly around internal cost control, and where those costs that we can control, we continue to focus on making sure that, yes, we have a sustainable platform, but that we are stringent around where those costs are going, noting that we do have some of those uncontrollables that we will, like you see across the council suite of assets, that we're all laboured with the same issues. So, but we're not going to take our eye off that. We need to continue to deliver good, successful financial outcomes, as well as those social and cultural outcomes that we are focused on also. So that brings us, hopefully I've kept close enough to our 12 minutes.
No, that was brilliant. Thank you very much, and thank you both. It's a really good report and good to see what's happening. And thanks for that financial structure as well. I thought that's very clear for I'm watching, so I do appreciate that. We've got a few questions. I just had one, and it's one people have started to ask me, and it might come back to that 3-month launch stuff you were talking about. Is when do you think? I mean, obviously around the timing of when Te Kaha opens, but at what point do you think we'll be in a position to confirm who our opening act will be?
Yeah, so timing is one thing. So we need confidence as to when that opening date is. Now, yes, we have confidence that the 20th of April 2026 is the target date, and that remains well and truly on track. But until such time as we've got absolute confidence, we just have to be a bit careful about locking too many things in. So a couple of things to note in terms of who an opening act is and when we might be able to lock that in. So big artists tend to tour in the summer months, regardless of whether you've got a roof or not. So those summer months are generally kind of November to March. Now, April is just obviously outside of that. So we need to work with what we have in terms of attracting an artist outside of a tour schedule, which can attract a little bit of cost. So that's just one constraint that we're working with at the minute. So also in terms of timing, we wouldn't probably be able to lock an artist per se in until sort of 12 to 18 months out. So we're just a smidge outside of that window. So so that's still a bit of a watching brief. Obviously, we have our base event content. So the Crusaders will absolutely, this is their new home, and we're looking forward to having the Crusaders play there. I'm sure they can't wait. We also have our Warriors partnership. So there's a bit of content already in there, but this is about marquee, and I understand that. So there's a little bit more time to go and a little bit more confidence in terms of just getting that date locked away.
Okay, that's really useful. Thank you. I'll keep asking until we get a name.
That's fine. You'll be the first to know.
So we'll go Aaron next, and then Vic, then Sarah, then Yanni.
I'll continue my conversation offline around who should be first there.
It's not going to be you, Aaron.
How do you know?
No, he doesn't.
Not saying it's conflict of interest. Yeah, I am very cheap. If it's all about cost. So the one in your highlights of 23, you had increasing cost on tickets for being sustainable, but that in itself is almost a contradiction. But alarm bells always go off for me when we do something to be more sustainable, but it costs more money. Like recycling used to make money, now it seems to lose lots of money. And so something's wrong with the process or something. So we're putting up cost, and if it's $1 a ticket on 8,000 tickets is $8,000, which means that the ticket holders have to work collectively another 400 hours, which has an environmental impact just to pay for that offset. But
yeah, so I do get it, and I guess there's a few aspects to how. And this is particularly
just so you know, the glass gets dumped under the roads, so it's not recycled. Anyway.
There's a few aspects too, and this is particularly around waste. So one is to make sure that we've got the right infrastructure, and that's relatively straightforward. Two is to make sure that we've got the right education, and that comes down to our staff as well as our guests, so we know where we're supposed to be putting our waste. Thirdly is to make sure that we've got the right partner when it comes to disposing of our waste, collecting and disposing of our waste. But there's a bit in the middle that is about sorting. And because we're dealing with such a high volume of people and such a high volume of waste, you have to be able to sort that waste, because otherwise it all ends up in the same place.
Yep.
And that's where the cost comes in. So that's unfortunately a bit of a tricky one to manage, because yes, we can utilise volunteers, yes, we can utilise staff, but I can tell you once the volunteer group's done it, they probably won't do it again. It's not the nicest of jobs, right? So we've just got to work through the best way of actually covering those additional costs, and that's sorting. The rest of it we can build into our normal operating expenditure, but it is that additional.
Cool, good answer, thank you.
Thank you. I promise this question is nowhere near as complex as Aaron. I want to talk about the Venues Otautahi team engagement slide that you put up, and it's really positive to see, encouraging to see the positive variance across those ones that you've chosen to highlight as your measures. My question then is, can you comment on where those numbers sit in relation to your SOI targets that aren't presented in the slide there?
So we actually don't have any SOI targets when it comes to team engagement. So so these are just how we're trending. So we don't actually have a team engagement SOI target in our SOI.
Is that something you're going to be addressing?
We haven't got it in this one, but it's not something we can't by any stretch. We just divide up our team engagement, and this, just of note, this is our permanent staff, not our casual staff. But yeah, I mean, we could certainly put it in there. We just haven't in the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And it's been amazing watching that sustainability journey over the last few years. You've come a long way and still working to get more done, which is great. So thank you for that. Just on that progression that we've got in Christchurch for musicians, and it is fantastic. Just wondering if you had any thoughts, or if you could turn your mind to in the next wee while that stage below the James Hay. So I know that we have a lot of groups coming to us, that early phase in a musician's career, and we struggle with spaces for that, and viability of spaces. So yeah, that pre-James Hay.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because it's I don't know if you know the tuning fork at Spark Arena, which is essentially it's about 400 max.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool space and really highly utilised. And again, it's just that little graduation. So it's definitely on our mind, because one of the aspects when we've talked about Te Kaha particularly, it's around creating that precinct of entertainment activity, and there are some smaller pockets, as well as thinking about what those retail tenancies could be, because one of them is the perfect size for something like that. We've just got to find the right partner that we can do it with.
Yeah.
But again, it does get high utilisation, and you're right, it's a really intimate, not intimidating, accessible type of option for that, that first step. Billie Eilish started somewhere. I'm sure Taylor was drumming a guitar in a 400 pack somewhere at some point.
Yeah. And so, just, creating that pathway for those, that early career stuff as well. Cool, thanks.
Cool. Someone must have been listening to my questions to on the local music stuff, because that was kind of one of the questions I had, was how can we get space in the new arena accessible for live venues? So at what point will we be in a position to understand what you're trying to do there and be able to see what's proposed? And how are you working with those local live music venues who already exist around the opportunity?
So in terms of, I guess I would break that into two. So in terms of getting clarity on what's planned there, is that outside of the sort of, the mainstream? So we've got arena mode, large concert mode, business events, all of those, that breakdown. Is this more about activating the precinct, or?
What I've always been very interested in is to understand what are going to be the things that raise revenue outside of the event, so that we've got a constant stream of using the space to raise revenue, or to just even have it activated rather than sitting dead when, because the reality is that most of the time during the year, it's not going to be used. So very interested in that, and understanding a little bit more in detail what that looks like. My understanding from previous conversations was that Barbados Street's going to have some activation, but but more specifically, I think the priority is around the live music venues, because we know that they're really struggling in the city, and so I think it's really optimistic to hear what you're saying about that. But I'm just wondering how we're working with those existing live venues.
Yeah, well, I guess there's a couple of aspects that I can cover off. So one is, I guess, the venue itself. We're forecasting about 200 events a year. So in all fairness, it will have good activation during the year. So 180 of those will be business events. So if you imagine, that's good footfall coming and going from the venue, every couple of days. And that's outside of those more major events. So that's kind of in venue. Then you get the precinct. So those couple of retail tenancies, and that's exactly what you're talking about on the Barbados side. So we'll be going out to market for expressions of interest, instead of just looking at as a basic lease space, is what are the activations that people could bring in. So it could be the likes of a sports museum, an interactive sports museum. If you look at the MCG, their museum is open every single day of the year except Christmas Day, and they're doing a massive amount of footfall through there. So those types of things. So that's the venue itself. Then you get to the precinct, and then we're looking at fan zones, how we can activate the, it could be markets or any of those in the precinct itself. And then there's outside. So like I was talking about around retail, hospitality, accommodation. So we're developing a venue app. And what we're going to look to do is actually bring in partners. And that actually, in all fairness, because we're thinking about it as being a Venues Ōtautahi Live, could bring in some of the venues as well. Because if it's a platform for hospitality, accommodation, transport, tickets, we can share all of that data and all of that to actually activate, because this is about a citywide approach, not just about the venue. The venue will do one thing, but it's actually about building up the whole city as that event capital of New Zealand, or for lack of a better word.
Understand that.
I'm keen to move this on. So
if I could
we
just
can
comment with that, we want to enhance the environment, not be a disruptor. And it's about understanding that smaller venue and how they're operating, because we're all aware that they are struggling for different reasons, but it's about being an enhancement to the environment rather than being a disruptor in that ground base, and that's really important. But it's also harder to understand that ecosystem, rather than the big stuff's really simple and straightforward. It's that how we can do that, and we've got so much on. But it's something that we're focusing on now.
Yeah, understand we need to activate the.
I don't want to have
but
conversation.
We need to raise revenue.
No, stop, guys.
So can I just
Yanni, one more question,
yeah,
then we're going to move on.
Yeah. So it's just to understand a little bit more about the local procurement. Like you've got Porridge Partnership RFP, you've got the Ticketing Service Partnership.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to. I was just quite keen to understand how the stuff that we've been doing with VO in terms of the local procurement, local suppliers, in terms of both financial and sustainability, how that looks in terms of things like the porridge or things like the ticketing, and whether we've got any, what the capacity is to use more local. It's not, again, a new question around ticketing, it's something I've raised previously, but yeah, is there any ability
so you've asked your question.
to look at that local suppliers, and how are we doing that?
Right, so in terms of local food, we remain over 80%, and that intention remains throughout when Te Kaha is here. Porridge, at the minute, we're sitting about 77% local. Now, there's nuance, obviously, with porridge, because sporting bodies, promoters more and more often now have their own partnerships, and we can't, we have to support their ability to be able to serve what they need to as well. So there's a little bit more nuance when it comes to that. The town hall sits at about 92% local porridge, so that's easy. But it's just the stadium and Hagley particularly that are a little bit more challenging. So local still remains absolute priority when it comes to porridge, but we also have to acknowledge those other commercial aspects. Ticketing, ticketers, there are three main players when it comes to ticketing. It wouldn't be, given the magnitude of this opportunity commercially, we couldn't go with a local. They need the right level of infrastructure. We need to be connected with the biggest promoters in the world to make sure that we maximise this opportunity for the city. So as much as, some of the expos and all of some of the smaller events that are at the town hall, for example, they can use other ticketers, because you don't want to be laboured with some of those larger costs when it comes to a smaller event or a more community type of event. But for our major ticketing, we will be going with one of the major players.
Just in terms of Te Kaha, if there is a more local community event, they'll be able to use their own ticketing. Like, they won't be locked into using. I understand for the major events, but like what you've just said with the town hall.
We do have some exclusions in our ticketing RFP for the likes of lifestyle events, etc. So I can't clarify exactly the threshold when it comes to the stadium, but we will have a preferred ticketer, and that will be the, I'd say 95% of the events that we deliver, they will use that, but we don't use the larger ticketers for some of the smaller events or lower cost tickets.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you both for coming in for that. Brent, is there anything you want to add at the moment? You're good? Great. Okay, appreciate you coming in too. That's great. So Sarah's going to move that. Mark's happy to second it. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Great. Thank you very much. So now we'll go to item 13, Aaron's notice of motion. Aaron, how do you want to do this? So Kelly's going to second it. Do you just want to, I'm just trying to think what we do with notice of motion. You introduce it? And then
I'll introduce it and we'll all vote for it and we'll move on to happier.
So there's questions. So do you want to introduce it, then we'll do some questions?
Okay, so
I don't want to spend like an hour if we can, but...
No, that's fine. I want everyone to be comfortable with it. The purpose of the notice of motion is, I think we're working in a broken system. Often you'll hear stuff that councils and governments deliver costs so much more than the private sector. So this is a chance for a working group to look deeply into that. The working group has to have Phil and Sam on it as a minimum. And the reason for that is our council currently, in this term, is lucky enough to have IP at the table that understands delivery of infrastructure. So we would be foolish not to tap into that. Sam is an accountant for Downers. He used to audit the council when he was an apprentice, so on and so forth. So he understands that economic side, and then most of the time. And then Phil has been delivering infrastructure since he could walk. He used to go to work with his dad and has learnt through that business. And you'll often hear him sit at the front and go, oh, this could be or should be done this way, or why don't we do this, why don't we do that? The idea of the working group is to look at all of those things and then rule them out. We might come back with nothing. There may be no savings, but some of the stuff that holds us back no doubt will be legislative. But you currently have a government that's also very keen to look at where those legislative problems are. So if we can highlight them, present them to them, we may then see some changes. But we cannot afford to keep spending on infrastructure the way we have, because the infrastructure delivery and spend by councils and governments is far exceeding the rate of inflation and has done for a number of years. So for us to not try and address that is really, really almost a dereliction of duty at this table. You've been elected to look after the city's finances. We have to deliver for future generations, and the only way to do that is to make it more cost effective. I know a lot of contractors, this would talk to them directly, where they would say, oh, why don't you do it like this, this and this, and then we will find out if that can be done. And that's the purpose of this notice of motion.
Maybe. We'll see.
Thank you. The lawyer in me just wants to raise a slight tweak to your wording to see whether you'd consider it. And apologies, I didn't raise it before today. Where you've got the word, the advice should consider A through G, I'd hate to get to a point where we get a report, we ask the report writer about something and they say we weren't asked to consider that. So could you put in there, the advice should consider but not be limited to, please? Thank you.
Yes, the non-lawyer in me agrees to that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Two questions of the CE. Does she have confidence that the processes currently in place, Section 17As, closeout reports, all those things, address the necessary desire to make sure that we're operating efficiently and effectively and with continuous improvement?
I think there is room to revisit some of the things in the way that we go about procuring things, and I know that the new head of procurement is keen to do that. So that will be particularly around the council's procurement rules that we want to review that at some point to try and see if we can be more effective and efficient in those places. We have already put things in place, as you're aware, like panel agreements to speed up things, but it is worth having a relook at it. And if the governance of the organisation want to have some oversight of that process, we're happy with that as well. So that this would be, if this was formed, staff would be advising this committee. We wouldn't be leaving them on their own to come up with ideas. So we would provide advice to this committee that then could come up to council.
No, that's cool. And the second final question is just how much will this exercise cost? I know today we're just asking for advice, but I like to have a fulsome understanding.
Yeah, so that will come back in the advice that we bring about what is the scope of this, what the resource requirements would be. So that would be in that advice that we come back with about the establishment of this working group, what actually timeframe and costs we would expect. So it will come back in that advice.
Cool.
So we can't amend the notice of motion because it's been moved and seconded. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, you
But
can,
apparently-
you can if the mover agrees, I think, can't you?
well, the highlighted advice I've got says not, but
Under the through you, Mr. Chair, so the Alter 22.4 says only the mover at the time the notice of motion is moved and with agreement of a majority of those present at the meeting may alter a notice of motion. Once moved and seconded, no amendments may be made
Has it been seconded?
to a notice of
so
motion.
Although under standing orders, you're also allowed to withdraw your moving and seconding. So you could withdraw the seconding, withdraw the moving, change it, and then move it again.
For heaven's sake, let's
So
just
I'm
do
pretty
it.
sure you can do that.
Well, you can.
cool. So let's not get bogged down in what Aaron's trying to avoid. so that's just been withdrawn. It's been slightly amended, and that's been moved and seconded again. Great. So now Sarah. Yep. Thanks for that. Oh, sorry, Tyler. Then Sarah. Thanks for your help on that. Yep.
Good, Aaron. I was actually pretty gutted you talked because now I've sort of got questions. The first one really is just around the makeup, your vision around the makeup of the working group. I know that there's only advice, but I'm just sort of wanting to steer the direction of, sort of get an understanding of, is staff going to come with advice or is it going to be working with Councillor Kewen and the Mayor on this?
So from what, and we did help Councillor Curran reword this, that what this is saying is that staff are going to come back with advice to F&P, or actually it would probably be council, to establish a working group, what those terms of reference would be, including what its scope would be and what the cost, and then it would be, and who should be the membership and makeup.
Okay.
And then it will be up to F&P, if it's a working group, to F&P or council to actually confirm that and establish the working group. So
Cool.
this is not being established today.
Yep, no worries. Thanks.
Thanks. I think this is a really good idea. I think that we should always be looking at ways of doing things slightly different, if there's more efficiencies, cost savings, those kind of things. I'm not sure it goes far enough. And I know that this is an infrastructure delivery working group. Many of the concerns that people raise about delivery and the things that we see out and about and on the streets are actually not to do with infrastructure delivery, they're to do with service and procurement of services. So classic example, Aaron, you often raise the street sweeping and the multiple trucks. That's not infrastructure delivery, but it's to do with procurement and those kind of things. So I don't know whether the ability for that procurement of those kind of large contract service things would be within the scope of this or not.
Yeah, good point, Sarah. That's maintenance of infrastructure, so I would have.
It's not the actual delivery of
No, it's not. Yeah, but it's the ongoing. I mean, our gutters are useless once they're full of rubbish and leaves, so I would have thought that that's a part of it. But I mean, that can be. I mean, staff are hearing these discussions, and it's got a pretty open scope at the moment, and not limited to. Means that hearing your words that they would come back with that in there, absolutely.
So maybe
Some advice on the inclusion of that kind of thing as part of the advice.
Yeah. No, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. It also doesn't. It's currently looking at procurement and capacity and cost of undertaking work. One of the things that people actually have the most gripes about is design, and I'm just wondering if we should do something separately at some stage on that design piece. There's a lot of talk about being able to do infrastructure in a different way, whereas this deals with how we procure it once we've decided what we want.
I would have thought this included design.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. From
Okay.
any kind of reading, anyway.
Okay. Hard to deliver without a design, but
yeah, you could note that and get some advice around that. Yeah, because I think there's definitely ways to be able to do that in a more cost efficient kind of way. So thanks.
And the way it was originally written, I did list some of these things out, but staff come back and cleaned it up in a way that they can kind of come back with anything they think that should be in there and done, because I was a little more prescriptive like you are, because contractors, anyone here that's had conversations with them, often say, why don't the council do it like this, this and this? But there's probably, like Jake raised, legislative reasons why we can't. But they need to be raised and looked at and then taken back to the government if necessary.
I was just wondering if there'll be advice about whether a working group is the best method of doing this. Or could it be, and I don't know what Aaron thinks about this, but because this is, and I know if something was to come out of the working group, it would come back to council, but I actually think because this is quite an important process that it would be quite useful for the detail of it to be understood by all councillors. I know that makes it sort of more cumbersome, but is it better just as workshops or something? Yeah.
My question is simply about the timeline. I see that we're requesting staff to provide advice in August 2024. I'm conscious that yesterday we put a lot of pressure on staff in respect of asking for advice and reports on a truckload of things. How realistic is this, Mary, to have this advice back in August, or do we actually, if we're going to do it once and we do it properly and we put some front-ending, some really good resource into this to help the process, do we need to allow ourselves a little bit more time?
Your mic's off.
So, okay, sorry. Can we stick with August now? And if we can't make that deadline, when we bring back the work program, we're intending to bring to council around all the actions we've got from yesterday, we may ask for a slight adjustment on this.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a good idea. And just noting B, capacity and cost of undertaking the work. So in your vision of it, so are you thinking that it would review supply chain constraints all the way from go to woe through the supply chain? Because you can have all the diggers in the world, but if you don't have planners or
Yeah, so I would expect that to feed in. A lot of that side would come more from the staff side, but I would hope that what does come back allows us to talk to contractors for them to come and be saying how we can deliver better as well, because the entire community owns our infrastructure and a chunk of the community delivers it, but they don't get a say on how it's delivered. And this is just, and it might lead to nothing, but if everything's looked at, we get under the hood. The guy right on the shovel at the bottom end of the entire network might have the most genius idea that's fed back into this, and we should always be open to that.
Okay, so we've got to move on to seconder. Does anyone want to discuss it? We still feel like we have Yanni would like to discuss it. Yep.
Thank you. Look, I think this makes a lot of sense. This is something I've been asking for a long time around looking at the cost of how we're doing things. Just for example, yesterday as part of the LTP, to ask for a report on a relatively simple design of two local connections for between the two MCRs, I was told that it would be $600,000. And when you think about that, I did some research and saw that an average, a median wage for a traffic engineer at the Christchurch City Council is $98,000. So that would effectively be 4 traffic engineers working full-time for a year to design a simple cycleway connection, putting $100,000 aside for consultation and other collateral costs, and then probably another $100,000 for corporate overheads, right? So when you think about that in that context, it's almost like we've become numb to the cost of some of the things that we do. And I think some of that may be possibly post-earthquake with the huge amounts of insurance money that flowed in and the whole climate that we were involved with. But it does seem to me we need to look at opportunities for reducing the cost of how we do things. So I'm very supportive of this. And ironically, today we've just had another report from the Statement of Intent around civic building, right? Where we're paying about $200 higher than the market rent for office space in the city. So I hope that this could look at also how we procure services, because clearly we are not very efficient at the moment, and there's a lot of room for improvement. So I welcome this work being done, and I hope we give this group as wide a mandate as possible to look at the effectiveness and efficiency that we can deliver.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, look, I think this is a momentous move. I think obviously we should always be looking for better value on behalf of the ratepayers and opportunities for efficiencies, which has already been mentioned. We have a history of this in other areas. We've got people on organisations like Venues Otahi, Christchurch NZ, CCHL. So we've got eyes on what happens and what goes on. And there's lots of benefits for that. The ability, amongst that, is the ability to explain to residents and colleagues what's going on in those organisations. People ask me a lot, as a council being ripped off, we're paying for this, we're paying for, why do we have so many cones? All those sorts of things. And it's actually really to explain if you have easy to explain if you have the facts, and I think, we'll all be better off if we're more informed on how these projects are put together and why we're paying what we're paying for them. Because at the end of the day, we all just want value for money for the ratepayers, and so I think this is a genius move, and I think it'll be really positive, especially if we get the right people, right councillors involved in there. So yeah, I'm super supportive and really excited about this. I think this is a massive step for us and really positive.
Yeah, thank you. Look, this is the first step, and I think it's a really good journey to get on. It's been acknowledged by our CE and staff with regards to they were looking at the procurement and looking how to go forward. So I think this is going to be a really positive way to go forward. I do think when we're talking about are we numb to the costs, etc., this is not a Christchurch-centric issue. This is right across the board. We're doing some building, or family doing some building in the Hawke's Bay. It is insane what things are costing. When you can go to Australia, get the same product, fill a container and bring it back for a third of the cost, the same product as here in New Zealand is absolutely ridiculous. But this hopefully will highlight the issue of a small environment, which New Zealand is. We have some very big players who are cornering markets, and I hope that some way via the council and my colleagues into political parties, etc., whether they go into Parliament, can look at how some of this can be negated through the Commerce Act. And that is really where this main problem is. But great first step, really support it.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I've got to commend Councillor Hanson. He's like an octopus. He gets to squeeze in these really creative debating points, and they defy plausibility. But I must say that it's really, really creative. So I'm going to be a bit creative of my own and talk about the irony with all of this. And the irony is communities actually care what happens on their street. I've said this before. They care about the road cones. They care about 6 people on brooms and 1 person in a bobcat. They care about that stuff because they think that they're not getting their value for money for rates. So in light of that, I'm actually very supportive of Councillor Kewen's motion here. But I am going to flag something. And the more Councillor Kewen talked, the more I was a little bit more wary of things, particularly around conflicts, and talking directly to contractors is a bit of a flag for me. And I think that the team do a really good job in terms of relationship management with that. And the further we're away from that stuff, the more safe it is for us as councillors. But at the same time, we do need to review cost-cutting measures. Design is another one that's actually really plausible in terms of this motion here today. But also looking at that about how we decide where money goes and what scope it's within. For example, in terms of transport, the number one issue that I'm having at the moment in my ward is chip seal. Chip seal is probably my number one. I've actually had a resident talk to me the other day about tar seal coming into her house. First of all, I thought, why are you wearing shoes inside? But I'm not judging. But second of all, the issue around the scope of works is something that needs to be looked at. Do we spend a little bit more for asphalt across the city, or do we spend a little bit less on chip sealing? So there's things like that we need to think about. So I'm really in support of this, but I would just want to flag with staff that I'd like to keep this clean and proper. Kia ora.
Kia ora. That's a really good comment, Tyler, about chip seal versus asphalt, because it just highlights the fact that we don't actually sort of make kind of overall sort of coherent strategic decisions about the kind of the direction we head at. And like so first of all, I just really want to support what Aaron's raised here. I think that it could go further. Yanni says it doesn't go far enough. I want it to be as broad as possible. There's an opportunity here for us to take a really positive, forward-thinking, strategic view of the way that we conduct anything that involves supply chain operational planning. Ever since I was an analyst at the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority, it has really what's the word I'm looking for? It's vexed me, the way that public organisations conduct their supply chain and operational planning processes. I don't think it takes a sort of a coherent, sort of integrated enough view. It doesn't look forward enough. I mean, we've just signed off a capital program report today on our F&P in this meeting, where we're happy to see a forecast that's changed quite significantly from the forecast 7, 8, 9 months ago. It's jumping around all over the place, and we don't actually really ever challenge why that jumps around and what the impact of that is. We don't take a forward enough view into the future. We don't look 12 months into the future, 18 months into the future. I really think that we should do that. And just to look at constraints, look at all of those different processes that make up operational delivery. And so I'm really, really happy to support this, and good on you, Aaron, for raising it.
Thanks, Aaron, for bringing this forward. I think everyone will be supporting this today. There's lots of other areas I think we could look at effectiveness and efficiencies as well, apart from just delivery of infrastructure. And that would include looking a bit more closely into our own budgets within the council that seem to still be a black box after being here for 5 years. But I think, I'm interested to see what the cost of the working group would be, just because we keep hearing that they don't want to do working groups, it's too much effort or something. So it'd be good to hear about that. I think all councillors should be included in this in some way or other. And the main point I was going to make is exactly the same as Tyler's around conflicts of interest. I think if I was a contractor coming to tell you what to do, I'd be like, add in this, this and this, and I'll make a bit more castings. So I think that's a very dangerous thing to do, and I think we need to be very careful how we proceed. Thanks.
I can tell you're getting grumpy with the number of people talking today about it. Oh.
This is going way different than I thought it was, so I'm quite surprised. Yeah.
Look, I'll admit to having a healthy degree of scepticism when I see a notice of motion from Councillor Kewen, but I will vote for this today. And actually, one of his comments really got me across the line in terms of this may come to nothing, and that's fine, but at least we've had a look under the hood. I think there's nothing wrong with governance doing that, if only, and I suspect we will find some efficiencies. Any organisation of this size and scale can always do some things better, a little better, but if nothing else, then it's given confidence to governance, and it's helped clear up some conspiracy theories really around how we procure, because I suspect, as I said before, there's some things we could do a little better, but I don't think that there's going to be any drastic improvements possible given all the processes we already have in place to properly procure and properly look at things. But I also suspect the way this is going to run is that Mary already has a couple of ideas in mind, 2 or 3. She'll serve them up to the working group. The working group will come back and say, look at these awesome things we've found. And when that happens, I just wanted to flag it now, early doors, so that we can take it with a grain of salt when it does come.
So cynical for someone so young. Okay, Mark.
Well, I think pretty much everything's been said, but thank you, Aaron, for bringing this notice of motion. I think it's a good degree of wisdom to get this looked at and to take a good look. Getting the best bang for buck for our ratepayers is what we're here to do. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this working group can come up with and see if we can't either confirm things are all good and sweet or whether there is a smarter way and better way of doing it. So thank you.
Yeah, so just finally before I hand over to Aaron, I mean, I'm happy obviously for this to progress. I think it's good to have ideas as they crop up, work through and to get some advice on. Probably the two things I've picked up out of this, which I think is really useful just to reinforce, is around the conflicts. Because I think we as an organisation spending over $500 million a year with contractors need to be very, very careful about not only how we operate, but the perception of how we operate. And the thing that sits in behind it for me is obviously the Local Government Act and the Public Finance Act that would do that. The last thing I want is judicial reviews on our procurement processes. But I think it's really good to actually look into the stuff and see whether we can get some efficiency. And I think it's worth just clarifying too that I would hate for people to have the perception that a working group is sort of seen as these real hands-on, doughy type people. That's not how we operate as an elected council. We are the governing body of the city council. I'm not, if I'm on it, not going to be boots and all in haggling with contractors or the like. We have a massive team of staff in here that do that every day. But what we can do is get assurance and work through some of the processes with them to ensure we're getting value for money. So I just want to flag now that we're a creature of statute in terms of how we operate as a council. We have legislation we need to comply by. That doesn't mean we can do a deep dive into this stuff, but just to be really clear, it won't be us doing it. It will be the council staff who will provide advice to us to make decisions or recommendations to council on. Because, and I talked to the Mayor about it this morning, he's been very clear that, I mean, Phil, to his credit, loves to get boots and all into everything, but he understands that conflicts need to be managed properly, and at the same time we need to protect the reputation of the council when we're trying to rebuild trust and confidence. So I think we can get the advice, but we're just sending a signal to everybody and to the council staff that that advice should not be that we're going to go boots and all in to be haggling with contractors, because that's not how we operate as a governing body. And I'm sure, as Jake mentioned, Mary's already got that written in the draft terms of reference she probably did over the weekend. So I'll pass that to Aaron and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, some interesting comments there from a number of you, and thank you for sharing all your views. It will only be successful if we are open-minded enough to listen to anyone who may approach us on ways the council can save money. And the ones that can do that the best are contractors. If contractors come in and give us a list of things that are going to cost more money but deliver nothing more, we all deserve to be voted out. If we support adding a whole lot of things that are going to cost more money, like that would just be the definition of shooting yourself in the foot. But there is clearly obvious stuff within contracting industries where they're frustrated themselves, and we are bound by legislation. I've got no problem myself of people saying that, because I'm not conflicted. I've worked with, for, and around contractors for years, and I'm more than happy to listen to what they've got to say. But if someone thinks that I've got a conflict on anything we bring in, if we save the city millions of dollars, happy to face that in the court of public opinion, because I know in my ward, if I save the city millions of dollars because we change our procurement process to do favours for people that save the city millions of dollars, I don't think I'll get voted out, and I don't think anyone else here will either. If the process is wrong, the process potentially needs changing. I'm not saying the process is wrong, because I'm open-minded enough to see whatever comes back from this. And like, and I think it was Jake's wise words were something around the conspiracy theories around contracting. Could be true, could be not. But maybe they are just conspiracy theories and people think that contractors ramp the price up. But I know, and I've heard just in the way that we tender, how hard that is for companies and how many tens of thousands of dollars they put into each tender. They have to add all that in, whereas you can go and talk to someone and say, we want this many kilometres of this, what will it cost? That's a completely different price. And so we need to get that information, look at it and go, yes, we can change our process, or no, we can't. We're happy to pay millions of dollars more. But let's see what it looks like. And thank you very much for everyone who spoke for it and supporting it. And it could lead to nothing, could lead to everything. We will soon see.
And I can because I'm the chair. I think you inferred, and I don't think you meant it, that comments around favours for some contractors or being accused of giving favours to contractors. I just want to be very, very clear before we vote that we're a creature of statute.
Oh, no, that's one of the rumours, the conspiracy theories that Jake refers to, that jobs are like our mayor that comes from a former contracting company, and people like to say, oh, they get this and they get that. They don't. And he's resigned from that company for that purpose, to keep that distance that was referred to by Councillor Harrison Hunt.
I guess what I'm saying is, just to be really clear for everyone when we're voting, and then we're going to vote, we're not having any more discussion on it, we're voting on some advice on a working group that will then come back and that will look at a process around looking at how we procure things.
Absolutely.
As opposed to the contractors themselves and who we procure with. So I just want everyone to be very, very clear before we vote that is the way we're going forward, or else that will not pass today. I'll roll it out of order. So are we all happy to vote on that? So all in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. Great, thank you. We'll stop for 10 minutes. Sorry, CCHL, and it's 11:15. Melanie will take the chair and we'll go from there.
our new chair of CCHL. Welcome. And Matthew Slater as well, so thanks for coming along today. Did you want to just start with the presentation?
I'll maybe make some, just a couple of opening comments, if that's all right.
Yes.
And the first one, this is the first opportunity that I've had to thank you for supporting my appointment as the chair of CCHL. It's coming up to 1 month. It'll be 1 month tomorrow, 4 weeks tomorrow since I took up the role. And I just wanted you to know that I'm totally energised by the opportunity to influence and support informed long-term decision-making around the city's critical infrastructure assets in the best interests of the city and the region and its long-term future. So you may or may not know that I was retired and I've come out of retirement to take up this role. So my sole motivation is how I can support you, support the subsidiaries to make good, informed, long-term decisions in the best interests of the city. I'd also just like to offer an apology for our acting chief executive, Paul Silk, who's currently in Australia as a result of a family bereavement. So we can go straight to the presentation. I thought it might be helpful just to observe a few things from the first month's involvement with CCHL. Firstly, in relation to the quarterly reporting, I understand that there's a review underway so that we can enhance transparency and insight through the quarterly reporting. And Matt, I understand, is talking with Linda and with Bede, and that work is underway, targeting the first quarter of next year, Matt?
Yeah, first quarter of the next financial year.
Yeah, to have a enhanced reporting package in place with those objectives of enhanced transparency and insight. Just in relation to the FY 25-27 dividend projection, that's been increased as in line with the request that was received from council to for CCHL to see if it could improve the dividends in the early years of the LTP, so the first 3 years. I would note that the previous board had agreed to increase the dividend in those first 3 years, but they hadn't yet determined exactly how they would do that. And so the new board, we've had an opportunity to firstly validate the decision to increase the dividend over the first 3 years, but also to consider how best to do that. And we will do that through changing the debt repayment, the CCHL parent company debt repayment profile over the 10 years of the LTP. So there's been no request of the subsidiaries by us to increase their dividend forecasts. We've managed that issue at the parent company level, and it's simply been done by slowing down our debt repayment in the early years of the 10-year LTP. By the end of the 10 years, we end up in a not dissimilar position. In the original LTP dividend forecast, we were paying down $480 million of debt, and in the revised dividend forecast with the increased dividend in the first 3 years of the LTP, we'll pay down around $450 million. So over the course of that 10 years, we're still making a very significant reduction in the parent company debt, and that parent company debt relates to the special dividends that were paid out in FY 16-19 to support the earthquake recovery. I think it's, I'd also just like to comment on the strategic review that was undertaken, initiated by council and undertaken with CCHL, and that was a very interesting and helpful piece of work, and I believe that there's a real legacy of common understanding from that work that's going to be beneficial for all of us in making good long-term decisions in the best interests of this critical infrastructure and in the best interests of the city and the region. It has given us all a much better understanding of the risks and opportunities that we see over the longer term, and it's that common understanding and also the building of trust and confidence across the group and through to council as the shareholder of CCHL. It's the building of that common understanding and the deepening of it, and the building of that trust and confidence that's going to give us the platform to work really effectively together. The subsidiary companies, CCHL as the holding company, and council as the shareholder. There are some big challenges on the sort of medium to longer term horizon, and I think the ones that stand out for me at this stage, at least, is ensuring that none of the infrastructure becomes a constraint to regional economic growth, and so we need to be looking at that very carefully, and we need to be tracking that carefully. LPC probably looms as the biggest challenge in that regard, and it's an area that we're putting a lot of focus and attention on to deepen our understanding of the demand profile and what implications that has for expansion and over what time frame. So that's an area that we've identified as needing a lot of our attention in the coming months, and we will need to deepen that understanding ourselves, and then we're going to need to assist you in gaining the similar level of understanding of that demand profile and of the expansion implications. The other area that stands out is Orion, and around the asset management plan for Orion over the next 10 years. And there's implications there for the electrification demand, the network development into new areas, and also decarbonisation. So that again will be a priority for us to dive in, get a deeper understanding of the current position and the outlook, and then to work with Orion, work with LPC to ensure that we're on the same page and that we're aligned in what those risks and opportunities are, and that you also have a similar understanding of those matters. So just in summary, in terms of my observations, my focus is going to be twofold really, all centred around engagement. We need to build trust and confidence across the group. Building of trust and confidence takes time, and you have to put a lot of effort and energy into being with people face to face and building relationships. And as we build trust and confidence, we need to deepen that common understanding across the group of what the key risks and opportunities are. And it's those two things combined that will give us the solid foundation upon which to work effectively together in the best interests of the community, the city and the region. I'm happy to pause there if you would like before I go on to the other matters on the slide.
And that would be good. So got Councillor Harrison Hunt had a question.
No, this is just for the rest of the report. The questions will be for the rest of the report.
Okay.
Around the other portfolios. But
Does anyone
kia ora,
have
Brian.
any
Just wanted
question
to say
around-
welcome and thanks, and I've heard nothing but good things about you. So I'm really excited to be seeing what you do with CCHL and working with you in the future. Kia ora.
Thank you very much.
Just with your comments with regards to Orion and the electrifying and the electric vehicles and other things, well, Orion, everything is regulated and capped, so we're going to be expected to invest more and more money into lifting that infrastructure. is there going to be discussion with central government with regards to being able to lift that cap?
Yeah, it's a regulated environment, as you point out, and one of the opportunities is the alignment of the asset management plan and the capital investment to the customised price path. So my understanding is Orion's intention is to negotiate a customised price path so that they can get a stronger connection between the pricing regime and the return on the investment that they need to make across the electrification and expansion into new areas and decarbonisation. Do you want to comment on that, Matt?
Yeah, look, the biggest area of concern that's that as a result of the draft, the DPP, the price pathway, the default price pathway, relates to that allowance for capital expenditure at the moment, and Orion will be submitting on that and giving feedback as part of that process, which is roughly a 6-month process through until the end of this calendar year, and then subject to the outcomes of that, then they may or may not go down the customised price path.
Because I mean, there's two things, isn't it? One is it's ensuring, as Orion did incredibly well with their investment into small power substations. So when we had a disaster, we still were able to get power to the ratepayers. But if we're starting to, or they are, because we're all in one big family. If we're going to start really investing in the infrastructure and we can't get a return on it, when does Orion start becoming a burden on the ratepayers? And that's what I'm concerned about.
And that's that's why we need to dive deeper into that. But I think the alignment of the capital investment to the price path is critical.
Yes.
Yeah, particularly given that that capital investment will be funded off Orion's balance sheet.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fields.
Thank you, Melanie. Kia ora, Brian. Good to have you in here. I'm just noting your comments about the port and the potential growth there, and sort of having to sort of figure out what the demand looks like. So obviously, to get freight movements out of the port, you've got the road constraint and you've got the rail constraint. So I'm just sort of interested to what sort of level you're kind of going to look at those freight movement constraints and your overall kind of view of how the port, what the future demand looks like there in terms of getting the freight from the ships to the inland port and beyond, obviously. So yeah, that's a big challenge for not necessarily things we control. Like we don't control the state highway, we don't control the rail network either. But obviously we've got an interest in those things being top notch.
Yes, I certainly know that the Brougham Street is has been identified as a challenge by the transport industry generally. With all of these things, you've got to be mindful of the full supply chain, and you have to be mindful of ensuring that you're not investing simply to move a constraint. So our deep dive will be to understand the full picture, not just the picture as it relates portside.
Councillor Keown.
Yeah, mine was just around Orion and any wiggle room they have. So we've had an issue for a number of years around large trees, streetline trees, the really nice ones, and then they get butchered every year, so the power lines don't get affected by the trees, which is a bit of a problem. And I've been alerted to a street in the last couple of weeks that's going to have its trees removed because of the power lines, big trees. Would Orion have room to underground 1 or 2 streets a year, or not at this point?
I'd have to take that on notice, unless, Matt, do you have that insight?
No, look, I don't know what their plans are with respect to undergrounding lines, so I'd have to take the question away and ask them.
Certainly all the community boards will be able to feed in a list of streets and stuff on which ones are the most affected. But if there was a program to underground 1 or 2 streets a year, would make a huge difference, especially as we're trying to green the city more, not de-green it, and big trees, some of these. So that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, happy to take it away.
Just on there, undergrounding also limits tree planting too, so to consider. Yeah. Are there any more questions on this first part? Okay, you can carry on. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Just to inform you that the final dividend for FY24 has been paid, which is good news. The SOI budgets and business plans have been finalised, and all the subs and CCHL SOIs which are about to be submitted all reflect the letters of expectation and the feedback that was received from the draft SOIs. The CEO recruitment for CCHL is in progress. The previous board had made a decision to go to market to search for a new permanent chief executive. The new board has reconfirmed that direction and has initiated the process. Where we have engaged Kerridge Partners to undertake that assignment for CCHL. At our board meeting last Friday, the board signed off on the assignment specification, and now we've asked Kerridge, before they step out into the market, we've asked them to connect with the subsidiary company chief executives, with your own acting chief executive and the chief executive of Christchurch, New Zealand, to get their feedback on ideal candidate profile characteristics and also any potential candidate leads. Once that's done, then we'll be in the market from about the second week of July, and we anticipate that that process will take through to the end of September, early October, where we'll be in a position to, hopefully be in a position to make an appointment. When I became involved a month ago, I was concerned about the potential for loss of institutional knowledge. Paul Silk's been serving in the role as acting chief executive for about 20 months now, and has encountered some pretty extraordinary circumstances during that time. But Paul is very committed to CCHL and to the city, and he is very committed to see through some of the important work streams that we've got in front of us and to maintain momentum around that. So Paul and CCHL have agreed that he will remain in the role as acting chief executive through to the 28th of February next year. We anticipate being able to make an appointment by early October, but with notice periods and Christmas time, we would expect that the most likely commencement date will be 1st of February. So that dovetails quite nicely and ensures that there's a smooth transition, and Paul's very keen to ensure that as well. So we've been well served there over the next 9 months while we move to appoint a permanent chief executive. And just on the board and the board subcommittees, the board at its meeting last week just reset the board subcommittees. I'm chairing the governance and appointments subcommittee, and our CCHL deputy chair Gil Cox is chairing our impact committee. We have also appointed an independent chair of our audit and risk committee, Mike Rondell, who's known to many of you, I think. And as far as the board is concerned, we intend to appoint a further director. We're just giving some consideration to exactly reviewing our skills matrix and giving some consideration to exactly what we need. But we will plan to have a new director in place prior to the annual meeting in November. And then we'll take stock and see again whether or not we feel that we're missing any material skills around that table, and to what extent we might need a further director. But we're just going to take it one at a time at this stage.
I'll just briefly cover off some of these further aspects, noting that the previous person to sit in this chair was talking about bringing the next Taylor Swift to Christchurch, and I'm talking about deferred tax, so I'll try not to lose you there. So dividends were received from the subsidiaries, broadly in line with the projections, and I was pleased to hit the button on the payment to council this morning in respect of the additional of the final dividend for the year, as Brian said. That reflects 5 of our 6 subsidiaries that are tracking at or above their operating budget. Orion's had a positive year. It closed out its 12 months on 31st of March, despite probably some challenges really with respect to those copper thefts that we've talked to in the past, which is sort of $1 million number in terms of the cost of that alone. Christchurch Airport, had a good seasonal summer service. I've seen some, despite the passenger numbers not quite being where we hoped them to be in the budget. I think there were a couple of announcements this week in respect of the Jetstar services to Cairns. Increased frequency of the Hong Kong Cathay Pacific route going to for a week, I believe. So some really positive signs there in terms of some of those international routes getting back up to their pre-COVID levels, and the property portfolio performed well year to date. Enable's really just a continuation of the year-to-date story regarding numbers tracking slightly ahead of budget and margins there, and so really happy with the results that are coming through on the Enable side, whilst City Care is also at or about budget, and the Spencer Henshaw aspect of that business is performing slightly ahead of expectations in the original business case, but we're all fully aware of the challenges there with respect to budgets and central government with respect to its main customer in that business. Littleton's soft volumes, I guess we've previously talked about the challenges in respect of the Red Sea and the logistics, and that saw probably the first half of this year, first half of the financial year, volumes a little bit soft. Positively, sort of February and March, we're back in line with the expectations, and we're sort of hitting our revised expectations of our volume. So I know the team's doing a lot of work in terms of that right now, in terms of what the outlook is for next year. But really a continuation of the themes that we've previously talked to at this table. Deferred tax expense, so very exciting. A legislative change in respect of the allowance for depreciation on buildings is going to give rise to a significant non-cash negative number through the P&L this year. I repeat, non-cash, legislative-based, and doesn't actually impact on the dividends that we actually project to pay in the future. But appreciate there's a lot of potential headline noise around the profit, which will be consistent with other property-owning companies, which will be consistent with other airports. So there's nothing exceptional about what's going to come through our accounts. I think we've previously flagged this deferred tax expense, which is going to come through, but I just repeat it here. That will reflect will impact a number of the subsidiaries, including the group results at an NPAT level, but doesn't actually have any practical change to the business. So probably enough on deferred tax. Leave the rest to the tax experts, which are having a great time debating that. Onto our intellectual capital. A pretty busy period. 7 director vacancies being filled, or coming to council at least for recommendation to be filled. Board effectiveness reviews completed. And what was talked about at our last board meeting was just where we go with the associate director program, which is just working to optimise the timing regarding that, and perhaps provide a bit more longevity to some of those appointments regarding that. And gender pay gap, I know that's been a point that's been outstanding for a while, and I understand that data is coming together for the year-end review. Health and safety is always front of mind, and I guess we get some pretty shocking headline numbers in terms of incidents and issues, and I guess probably to give some perspective to that, I think there were 24 fire extinguishers, 53 batteries, 103 gas cylinders that went through the recycling plant at Eco Central, and they have a number of incidents, and I spent a little bit of time there recently with the team, and it is a genuine challenge for operating that business, managing the health and safety and keeping the team that frankly processes an extraordinary amount of recycling out there. When you get up front and close to it and see it in action. So Yeah, look, I just want to acknowledge that, and the team is doing everything they can, but there is a big challenge there regarding contamination of the product that they receive. So, various other aspects. Our Hui Huanui program is ongoing. Some te reo development. Matariki's obviously highly topical this particular week, and efforts there to upskill the group in terms of te reo, and particularly across all the subsidiaries really, and CCHL is taking a leadership position with respect to that program. Carbon is probably the focus under the natural capital aspect of our business, and the challenge at the year end is there's a lot of counting, there's auditing, there's emissions reductions plans, there's climate related disclosures that we've got to produce, and the FMA just recently acknowledged that it's quite a complex challenge for a portfolio of companies to bring that together and present what is a group perspective on climate related disclosures. So we're working through that. It's new for us in this first year where we're a mandatory reporting entity. But yeah, that's a focus for us. But really, in many respects, I want to turn the attention to what are we doing in terms of achieving better outcomes in terms of our Scope 1, our Scope 2 emissions, and achieving science-based targets, and reporting that back to you. And I understand we've got a session in October that will provide some more colour to that in due course. So probably enough from me. I'll pause there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Councillor McAllen.
Thanks, Brian. It seems like it's all going pretty well, really, for 1 month, and you're doing a lot of great work and solving some issues for us. You mentioned about appointing one person to your board. I mean, we had, was it 3 or 4 vacancies come up recently? How has the figure of one been arrived at, or is that just one at the moment and you're looking to make others down the line?
Yeah, we just want to take it slowly. There's no rush. We've got good capability around the table as it stands, and as we sort of deepen some of the dives into the areas that we've identified for getting that better understanding, we may identify skill gaps around our table that we want to fill. So we think if we move on with one now, the board's yet to have that discussion about the skills matrix and what skills we'll prioritise for this first appointment. But we'll do that over the next few months and then make that first appointment. But there may well be more to follow, but that's the starting point.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think the other thing, we're dealing with infrastructure assets here. It's I wouldn't call it dynamic by any means. So we do have such an opportunity to take our time and to be very careful and considered in our decision making. We don't have to rush, and that's such a benefit to be in that position.
I've got a question. I've got a few questions. First one is, with the strategic review, we didn't follow through with some of the aspects of that included in the infrastructure table here, those SOI measures. I was just wondering, with the value strategy, is that still something that would be worthwhile working through together between Council and CCHL?
Yeah, look, I came in at the sort of the back end of the value strategy, and I understand it was something that councillors were working through as part of the workshops, and yeah, happy to engage with council as part of that. I understand it was a council initiative regarding articulating the value strategy and how CCHL can contribute to that. So happy to pick that up in partnership with council if it's something that is desired.
Mm-hmm. It'd be good for councils to discuss that in some way if you can figure out how we do that. Councillor Hanson, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your report. Just had a question about health and safety at the port. We're told that there's been 4 incidences at LPC, no injuries, but obviously, there's been a bit of a history at the port over quite a few years now around cultural and well-being in terms of staff. So I'm just wondering, are you getting any reporting on progress around addressing those culture issues that the former, well, probably the successive CEs at the port have said that they are addressing, but we don't seem to have any visibility of how that's being measured and how we can have confidence in what's happening in terms of the culture, and obviously health and safety is a key part of that.
I think that flows through to the comments I made about the quarterly reporting and the transparency and insights that could be enhanced through the reporting. In terms of any information that we're receiving, I'll leave Matt to comment on that. But we have prioritised engagement with the port. Matt and I were at the port on Monday afternoon with the chief executive and 4 members of the executive team, and they spoke to the what they would describe as their transformation program. They spoke to how health and safety is at the very heart of that program, and we have some confidence coming out of those discussions that that is the priority for the port, health and safety and the culture associated with that, and well-being in support of that as well.
Yeah, and then I guess a little bit hard to see, but there's a directional chart regarding the lost time injury severity rate that I've got from LPC, and it, I think you can tell from there that it's definitely going changed substantially over the last couple of years, and it's gone in the right direction. So I guess there's a metrics element to this that appears to be okay, but I guess it's a little bit dangerous relying on the neat metrics and the numbers, because they're always influenced by other things and reporting and that sort of thing. So there's a cultural element to this that has to be worked on, and I know that's front of mind, but the metrics appear to be, certainly at face value, going in the right direction.
I think that's just a comment on that too, is that the reporting is one thing, but getting out, being with people, talking to people, having the conversations, that's where the real insight comes from. And, we have the opportunity to do that. It's a big part of our role. And we'll be doing more and more of that, and that will help us provide greater insight back to you.
That's good. Just two further questions. One was the Associate Director program has been put on hold. Do we have a date for that restarting? I thought that was one of the a real positive thing that CCHL was doing.
Yeah.
So are you able just to give us a bit of a understanding about why it was put on hold and what the plans are going forward?
I'm not familiar with the reason for why it was put on hold.
I guess there's a couple of aspects here. One is resetting and working up the Christchurch City Holdings Board and getting that settled and working with Brian and the new board. And the other part of it really is around some feedback we got from the last cohort regarding the timing of when these appointments are made and how long they go for. So I think it's going to be more like an 18-month sort of process in terms of the appointment, and when that starts is kind of a crucial element, and crossing over financial year ends and when's a good time to induct associates into it. So by on hold, it's really a deferral and just optimising when we actually do it is probably the key point there. Yeah.
And just in terms of specific companies, I had 2 very specific questions about the companies, and I don't know if it's better to raise it with you now and get a response later, but just to flag. Was really interested around the environmental, around what progress has been made around the cruise ship request that we made as a council around looking at some sort of environmental levy to offset the impact that they were having, both from emissions and sustainability. And then the second one was specifically in regards to the airport expanding its food offerings, just kind of, I guess, a bit of a question around, we've heard that the passenger numbers have dipped or as forecast, and it just a kind of question around what controls do we have around non-essential spending at the moment, given we're so capitally constrained?
Yeah, I think I can comment on that. I think there's a heightened awareness across the group, and we'll continue to reinforce it around the use of capital. In relation to the airport announcement around the terminal upgrade, which came out, I think, last week. My expectation was that would be a cash flow positive announcement in year one, and I've subsequently confirmed that with the airport. So the airport had the retail environment at the airport has not been the airport design was not necessarily fabulous for retail, but the upgrade that's been undertaken, not all of that capital has come from the airport. So I think it's comforting to know that it's cash flow positive in year one.
Okay, we've got Councillor Fields.
Kia ora. Brian, just getting back to the report there, do you have any concerns about the relationship between the workforce and the executive management team at the port at the moment?
Not something that I've picked up on in the limited engagement so far. It seems to me that there's been some very positive steps made in the relationship in support of improving the culture, and particularly in support of putting health and safety at the centre of their transformation efforts.
Councillor Barber.
Thanks, Brian, Matt, for coming along, and thanks for steadying the ship. It's much appreciated. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about how comfortable you are with CCHL overall debt. Is that something that you can expand upon? Because I understand it's $2.4 billion.
2.3
on assets of 5.3, something like that.
Yeah, they're the rough numbers. I guess the challenge, various debt numbers get talked about. And at a really simplistic level, there's sort of $600 million that the shareholder, CCHL, carries and services in its own right. So that gets paid out of the dividends from the subsidiaries, and so reduces the dividend to council at the end of the day. That's quite simply how it works. There's a challenge there because that interest bill has to be paid before we pay a dividend to council, and when you do the maths, it just adds to volatility of the leftover in the pot in order to pay council. So, the absolute amount itself, we're well within our covenants, well within our financial covenants, not at risk of breaching those based on our actuals or projections. So in that respect, it's a manageable debt number from a pure covenant compliance perspective, and our ability to access the market, including through council as part of the LGFA funding sources, and in terms of our public bonds, we're well supported there. So you can look at it in a number of lenses, and in a perfect world, less debt would be an absolutely wonderful outcome. But at this very point in time, we're compliant with our covenants, and comfortable that our dividends from the subsidiaries are actually can support that.
Okay, and just a little follow up. So in terms of the assets, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, that the value of the assets has grown by 600 million, is it, over the last year or two? Does that ring a bell at all?
Dangerous for me to quote a number right here, so not 100% sure. But you sound about right. Right, there's been a significant capital growth through the portfolio, property revaluations and things like that, which would give rise to that sort of number. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I think there was a lot of there has been some public conversation about the potential or the projected growth in debt over the next 10 years. I would note that conversation has taken place without the context of the growth in the asset value over the 10 years as well. But the debt overall over the next 10 years is projected to decrease. The increasing element is the Orion debt that will be required to support their asset management plan. Right. But as we talked about earlier, that's the return on that is going to be linked to a regulated price path, so it's less risky than normal debt, if you like. So, but the parent company debt and the rest of the group debt over the next 10 years is projected to decrease, leaving aside the Orion component.
Right. So, if it's a house, the house is increasing in value substantially, and we are slowly paying off the mortgage, so to speak.
Yeah,
despite might having to replace the roof at some stage.
Yeah, our very base case projections have us repaying some of that parent debt over time, at a moderate pace. The challenge is their base case projections are always wrong, and I guess don't need to tell anyone at this table the risk of shock, black swan events. That's the challenge that you face with an infrastructure asset intensive portfolio, and what that might mean. There are always challenges, and things like insurance are present ever increasing challenges for us, and how we manage that is probably a real focus for us over the next 10 years. But those base case projections certainly have us repaying the house, as you say, slightly.
Without selling the garage, yeah, good point. Can I just ask one more? So, obviously, we're involved in infrastructure. Do you ever see a day where we might be able to look at investing in other areas? It's, aerospace, water bottling, whatever, something outside the infrastructure, the current infrastructure sort of portfolio we have. Yeah, a new member of the family, as Tim has so eloquently put it.
Well, we had a new member of the family. It's Harold's and Abel.
Oh, it's only 10 years. Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah.
So there is a precedent for it, and a very successful one, I might add. Right now, I think our focus is on the risks and opportunities around the existing portfolio, and I think that's important that we dig in on that. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. But you're open to the idea, should opportunities come up. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? We've got PX as well after this. So, thank you very much for this public portion of us working with you today. And thanks for the positive comment about enable, because I completely agree, not all councillors do. So thank you for doing that in public. I'll move that we receive the report. Does someone want to second that? We've got Kelly Barber seconding. All those in favour say aye. Any against? And that's carried. So now I'll move that we move into PX. Brian and Matt can stay for the next item. Have we got a seconder for that? So Councillor Scandrett. All those in favour say aye. Any against? No. So now we're on PX.